Good evening and welcome. My name is Ginger Fay and I'm one of the directors here at Appleruth Tutoring Services. We are a tutoring and test prep company and we love working with students to help them achieve their goals. We are thrilled to have such a wonderful colleague with us this evening and a great conversation ahead of us. We're going to give you a chance to ask any questions you have, and Kim and I will do our best to answer as many as we can pack into the next hour. We do want to start by asking you a question. We'd love to know a little bit more about our audience, so we're going to run a quick poll. Love to know if you're a student or a parent or an educator, and where you as a student or your student that you're representing is in this process. So if you could take a minute to complete the poll, we'd appreciate that and love to get to know you a little bit better as we get started. I want to begin by introducing my colleague, Kim Lifton from the WOW Writing Workshop, which is a great group that will get you through the college essay process. If you need a little help and support, Kim has a background herself as a journalist and a writer, and she really has a wonderful gift for helping students discover their voice and tell their story. So I'm thrilled that she could be with us tonight and share her expertise with you. I have been applying to college for 25 years or so, so I might get the hang of it sometime soon. I've worked in college admissions at Duke and Emory. I've read applications for the Coca-Cola Scholars as well as the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation. So I've read, I think, well over 50,000 essays at this point, which I think qualifies me to talk about it for an hour. So I'm glad to share that this time with you, Kim, and grateful for you sharing your expertise with our audience. So if you all have questions, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A box. As I said, we'll try and cover as many as we can. If you are doing other things this evening and not able to take notes, please know that this session is being recorded and the recording and the slides will be shared with you in an email on Thursday. As we get started, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Appleruth and why we do these kinds of programs. So our fundamental belief as an organization is that when you change a student's self-belief, you can change that student's life. We believe in helping students find their confidence so that they can build the skills that they need to be successful in school, in college, and in life. And so we are thrilled when we're able to partner with students and families and schools in building those skills. And we do that by academic tutoring. We work with students anywhere from elementary school through college. We also work on preparation for high stakes standardized testing like the SSAT if you're applying to high school, or the ACT and SAT that many high school juniors are in the throes of now. We also help students apply to graduate school as well. And we also work with students on executive function skills so that they have the background that they need to be their best selves. We do have our summer sale, which is coming up starting next week on June 1st. And because you are watching this webinar tonight, you can have early access to this sale. So feel free to reach out to us if we can be of help to you in this journey on your way. So thank you for letting us be a part of the ride. And thank you, Kim, for being with us tonight to talk especially about how parents can help their children with the college essay, maybe a little bit about how children can help themselves and how parents can help stay out of their way. This is part of our Path to College series. So if you've been joining us during the month of May, we've talked with ninth graders about study skills and strategies and how to make a good transition to high school. We've talked with students in the middle about not being sophomoric and how to use the time in and out of school to build their story that they're going to learn how to tell from you, Kim. And then tomorrow night, Jed Appleruth is going to give the last session for the, I guess now they're rising seniors, but the current junior class. So this is
that's great.
A jam-packed series, and we're really thrilled to have you be part of it, Kim. Thank you.
And I'd rather go before Jed Appleruth than after. You guys are in for a treat. Here, can you go back one sec?
Sure.
Okay, so before I begin, I'm Kim. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And tonight we are going to talk about what parents can do to help their child with the college essay, but I wanted to piggyback on something that you said, Ginger, which was like, what is it that you shouldn't do? And there's going to be a lot of focus tonight on what you should do, and what you shouldn't do is, I hope, my goal is that it's obvious to you that you really can help your child. But I want to tell you a little story about the time that when we first started our business, we used to tell parents, just go away, stay out of the way. You can't do anything. And my sister's son, my nephew, was applying to college. And I said, just send him to me. You just stay out of it, sister. You can. And she's, you know what she said to me? She said, Kim, tell me what I can do. Don't tell me what I shouldn't be doing. And I just thought of that story, Ginger, as you said what you did. And, we dedicated our very first book to my sister because we said, we're going to write a book for parents. And we changed the whole conversation because you know what? You guys love your kids. I love mine. You know them better than the people in their lives, not better than they know themselves, but you know them really well. So I'm never going to tell you you shouldn't help them. But I'm going to tell you there are limits, and we'll talk about some of that tonight. But I want you to leave here tonight feeling good. And our goal, like April's goal, is so these kids, these children, we want them to feel good about themselves and to be able to blossom and thrive. So the college essay, which can be unbelievably daunting, and I'm sure Ginger will agree with that, and anybody who's ever worked with a child will say that, it doesn't have to be so hard. And so we'll talk about this tonight. Anyway, so I'm going to focus on 3 themes here. How you can help. Our top 5 list, which is really a compilation of the top questions we get. We get more than 5, but they're kind of thematic. And then I'll give you some resources. I'm going to give you all a free book. And Ginger and I together will answer your questions. Because Ginger is my favorite person to co-present with, because there's like 100 people here and I can't see you. It just kills me to not be able to talk to you. So at least in Ginger, with her background at Duke and reading more essays than even I've probably read, I don't count them, but maybe it's a lot. But Ginger is such a good person to present with me. And so you're going to hear from both of us, and we're both going to answer questions and kind of talk along the way. So we can go the next. So here's Kim. So I'm going to talk about myself in the third person. You'll have to put me out. How parents can help. This is my list, which might be a little surprising and different from the other lists that you've seen in your life. So what we believe at WOW, at the core, is that you do have a role. And the biggest role is you can teach your child to reflect. You can go for a car drive and ask them what's important to them and why. You can talk to them at dinner. You can talk to them about anything except saying, hey, buddy, can you take the trash out? Like, focus on them, focus on the positive, ask them what's important to them. And it's a continuous conversation. Please, I'm begging you, don't tell your child what to write, ever. Sometimes parents tend to think that they know what colleges want to read, and you don't, and I don't. And even the people who work with the children who read those essays don't even know. So check this out. My friend, Ginger's friend, he's presented also for Apple Ruth, and this person, his name is Sean Pelton. He's the Deputy Chief Admissions and Enrollment Officer for, I almost said Duke, for Cornell University. Sean, here's what Sean says. Ready? Despite what you might believe, I don't have something specific in mind when I review essays. I want to say that again. I want to say that 10 times because I want you to hear it. And if you hear it from Sean and not Ginger and not Kim, not me, you have to believe this. He said, I don't know what I want to read, but I do know I want you to reflect to the best of your ability and your answer to any prompt so I can get to know you a little better as I review the application. To succeed, which is the goal, you'll have to keep your story genuine, focusing on traits and characteristics that matter to you, only you, not your high school counselor, mom or dad, that's you, not your older sibling, not your English teacher. He wants to know, why are you telling me your story? What do you want me to know when I'm done reading it? And what does that demonstrate about you? So he said, I've been working in college admissions for a few decades, and in this time, I've noticed that students spend too much time searching for stories they believe will make them sound different or unique. Please don't do that. It's a waste of your time. I don't want different. I don't want unique. I just want to know what makes you the person you are. I want to know what matters to you. I want to know what you care about. I want to know what you dream about. That is what Sean and every admissions officer I have ever talked to wants. And he wrote that in a beautiful foreword for our upcoming book, which if you guys stay in touch with me, you can have first dibs on it for free. Okay. The other way you can help is to be a cheerleader, not a coach. You can sit on the sidelines and just tell them how great they are. Support them. And keep saying this, trust yourself. They can get help, but make sure it's the right kind of help with the right kind of person who isn't going to tell them what to write, who isn't going to tell them what the reflection is, isn't going to tell them something that's not real. And you can help them stay calm, create a calm environment in your home so that they can relax and succeed. Okay, let's move on. So as I said, this list might surprise you. And if you see this next slide, you might know why. Because it's not what many of you might have thought your job is. Now that you've heard what admissions wants, you might be thinking more aligned what I'm saying here. But what you didn't see is a list that says, tell your kids what ideas to write about. Tell them what's important to them. Make sure they listen to your ideas. Edit their essays with a red pen. That is what people think. So just play around. Just be with me for a minute and think about this. Close your eyes and just listen. What if, just what if, everything you think you know about the college essay is wrong? I want you to think about that. And now you should be writing down some questions about that because it's a really great conversation. So what if that? Okay, Ginger, we're ready for the next one. Here's a few myths that you may be familiar with, right? This is my favorite. This is what I call the newest myth in the college essay world. And it's that colleges look for 5 specific traits and characteristics in college essays. Now, what I'm going to say is this isn't completely wrong. It's completely out of context. Colleges do look for certain traits and characteristics in a complete application in the holistic review. Of course, they're looking for certain things in their class. But as Sean said, as I say, as Ginger says, and we are experts in this, they want to know the trait that makes you who you are, that makes your child who they are. 1 trait, 2 traits, it doesn't matter, but they want to know who that person is. And if your child reads something on the internet, which they will, that says, here are the traits, and they list them, and every list is different. There's 5, 7, and 9. That's what I've seen. I see the same stuff you do. If your child does that and tries to write to a trait they think colleges want, like leadership, if they do that and they don't feel like they have it, it is not going to be genuine, and it is going to fall on deaf ears, and it will not help them. So that's my favorite myth of the day. It changes every week. The other one is that the essay must be perfect. It has to sound like Hemingway, or let's find one, or oh God, I can't even remember what they're reading these days. And any current author. Ginger, you got one? Okay.
It should just sound like them. I don't think
No, I
Hemingway.
know, but I'm thinking about like, or Amanda Gorman. How's that? That it's just got to sound like the student. It doesn't have to have a comma in the place where the English teacher says it goes. They don't really care. Seriously. They want the content. They're not reading for a perfect sentence. And you know, what we do with funky sentences at WOW, we leave them alone. The only reason to change it, and the student has to change it, is if it's too long. And we say, oh, here's a way to cut it. But we don't do it for them. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't know many 17-year-olds who write anything perfect. And the person on the other end reading might be skeptical if it is. The other myth is that impressive topics stand out. No, they don't. Your child will stand out. Your child is impressive. The topic is secondary, it's important, but the subject, the student, is critical. Who is the student? What does the student want to share? Why? And the other one that I hear a lot is people always tell me don't write about sports. My teacher told me, the admissions person told me, I don't know where this stuff comes from. I think, again, things throughout the internet is loaded with stuff. Teachers, counselors, they all read things. And people do say this, but the myth is you can't write about sports. The truth is you shouldn't write about sports. You can write about your relationship with sports if you're a student. You can write about a reflection on a sport. It doesn't have to be, it shouldn't be about I touched someone out and the winning goal, or I lost a race, but it should always be your reflection on whatever moment you're talking about. So sports are fair game. Controversial topics are fair game. Boom. So these myths exist because people feel this need to grasp what they hear, tweak it, change it until it's completely out of context or wrong. And that is why we developed the WOW method, and it's this 10-step process that starts with developing content. Our first 6 steps of our process are all about developing content. Don't even discuss a structure until the second draft. Step 7 and 8. And then the last part of it is structure and polish. So we know the difference between that myth and the fact. We give the student, the playing field so that they can develop and see how their essays transpire. And through this process of writing and revision, their essays emerge organically in the structure that they're supposed to be in, and they sound like the students. And I got to tell you, when you just leave the kids with instructions and let them do what they're supposed to do, these are the most beautiful stories I have ever seen. And note, they don't sound the same. Even if they have a topic that's similar, they never sound the same because no two brains are the same. So I love that. Okay, next. This is a slide that we wanted to make bigger for you. But the idea is that we have these 10 steps, and we have, we break them down, and this is how you can see just more clearly that 1 is understand the prompt. 2, we brainstorm ideas. 3, I can't even read it either, if I know how to focus on theme. 4, free write for details. No, I know what they are, but I said, you're right, I can't read it. And then we write the first draft. It's step 5. The thing that I want you all to remember about this is step 1, understand the prompt. Because so often people believe that you just have to have a topic and then you go off and write. Well, you need to know what it is you're doing before you start writing. And we spend a lot of time making sure our students understand what colleges are looking for, understand what the prompt is asking, understand what they want to share with colleges before we even brainstorm for ideas. It's so important. Okay, can move on now. Our secret at WOW is process, plan, and schedule. And if you think about life, everything kind of has a process. But one of the things that we noticed when we were developing our process was that there weren't any. There's a lot of tip sheets, there's a lot of stuff out there, but nothing that would actually just create a simple process that would be easy for students to follow. So we created a process, we give every student a plan, and we give them a schedule to hold them accountable and keep them on track. And everyone's custom. So no matter what you do, no matter who you work with, if you want to work with us, let us know. We'd love to talk to you. But it's important to have a schedule and to keep these students on track, just like it's school. Okay. Oh my gosh, we're already at our list, our top 5 list. So here's where we're going to go with this. So these are the questions we get. And this is where Ginger, we're going to do this together because it's so fun. So we get a lot of the same questions. Every single month, I do a free class just through my business. And it just tells people about the college essay. And I have like 200 people send questions, and I can group them into 5 themes. And one is they ask about best topics and worst topics. And my answer is that they are the same, that any topic that answers the prompt, showcases a positive trait that the student wants to share with colleges, is genuine and answers the prompt, you're good. You're good to go, no matter what. And it's the same answer for worst. If it doesn't answer the prompt, if it doesn't showcase a positive trait, if it's not reflective, then it's not a good topic. Okay, Ginger, it's your turn. Chime in. What do you have to say about this?
I would agree. I always struggle with the lists that are published online that you and I have talked about, with sort of, these are the do's and these are the don'ts, because almost everything on the don't list I've seen done really, really well by a particular student. So I think topic is probably not the right question to be asking. Really, is it's really more for a student to think about what it is that they want the college admissions officer to know and understand about themselves. In particularly, what quality is not already reflected in other parts of their application, right? So a student who's hardworking doesn't have to tell me that because I can see it in their transcript. A student who's athletic doesn't have to tell me that because I see it in the way that they're spending their time outside of class. But a student who's compassionate might need to tell me a story about that because I might not see that anywhere else in their application. So it's, I think, not so much the topic, but the quality of self that the student is trying to convey. And I certainly would never say that there are best and worst qualities of students. The admissions officers who are reading your application are just trying to get to know you, and your application as a whole and your essay in particular is the method by which they do that.
Right. And then Kim Bryant, you know Kim, right?
Mhm.
From University of Michigan. So she always says that like students talk all the time ad nauseum about details about their sports injuries. And this is where we get to the sports thing. She said, I want to know, what did you learn from that injury? Like, if you could not do your sport any longer, what is it you would focus on and why? Boom. Okay. Now let's go to number.
It's probably, it's probably students who are applying to the School of Kinesiology at Michigan who are writing all those essays about sports injury. It might be a little bit of a self-selected pool there.
It's kind of a cliche, but it also plays on that myth that you can't write about sports. You can. And summer camp. How many of your children worked at summer camp? And if they go to summer camp for 8 years and then they become a counselor and they want to write about something that happened at camp, like, I don't care. So we start there. We start where the student is. We got to make these students feel ownership. Doesn't matter the topic, because that child is going to learn something meaningful, the same thing somewhere else. So it doesn't matter if it's camp, and it doesn't matter if 2,000 other kids apply to the same school and were camp counselors, because everybody learns something different from every experience they have. They don't do different things, but how they approach it, what they take away from it, is unique to them. You don't have to be unique, but your experience on it makes your child's experience makes your child special. They're all special. So, okay.
That's what my mom told me. She said, you're unique like everyone else. I believe her.
I love that. I'm going to put that on a t-shirt. We'll get it for all of you here.
It's
You're
true,
unique
Kim.
like everyone else.
I've read a terrible essay about camp and a really, really effective essay about camp. And they were versions of the same essay from the same student. It started out really not a compelling story, but by the time he reflected enough about the experience and what it meant to him, it wasn't a book report about camp anymore, which was how it started and why it wasn't a really effective essay. And then it became this story that talked about what he valued that helped, I think, the admissions officers see what it was he was going to bring to their campus.
Isn't that great? So our top 5, number 4, we've kind of answered that, but there's more admissions people we can talk about. So what do admission counselors look for? Well, Remember those myths? It's not that. it's It's connected to that. But what they look for is what Sean Felton said. Why are you telling me the story? What do you want me to know when I'm done reading it? And what does that demonstrate about you? It's the traits, it's the characteristics. It should be personal, genuine, authentic. All those buzzwords, make them real. It's an opportunity too. It's take it. It's an opportunity to stand out. But I remember I was doing a panel in New York with a admissions person from Columbia who said, and I don't mean to talk about Ivies, I've got to like talk about some regular schools here, but there were some admissions people, and what she said to the whole, it was a group of counselors and independent education consultants, and she said, we want to know how you think. We believe our freshman comp class is going to teach you how to write. That we're not worried about that. We want to know how you think. So they're looking for something that shows them how you think, that takes that personality of yours and makes it pop on the paper. Like they can see this image of you inside of their heads. That's the goal. The goal isn't to say, I want you to like me. I want you to do this for me. I want you to notice me, to stand up. I'm standing up in front of you. Notice me. Darn it, just notice me. And take me to the next step. Don't you want to meet me? I'm awesome. That's the goal. That's how you stand out. So I know that you have some more to add to that, Ginger.
I think everything you said, and I think what Sean said was compelling as well. I always feel when I've read an essay, if I can imagine that student at their locker in a classroom, playing video games with their friends, whatever it is, if I can imagine them, then their essay has been effective because it's helped me really feel like I know who they are, what they value, and what they think is important. A misunderstanding, I think, of the college admissions process is that it is a prize to be won. And if you do everything right, then you get it. And if you don't do everything right, then you don't. And that's not how college admissions officers think of it. They're really thinking about building a community of people who are going to learn and grow together. And communities are more interesting the more different kinds of people who are part of that community. And so that's why there's no answer to this question. There's no one formula. There's no one approach. There's no sort of, oh, you have a great relationship with your grandmother. Check, you're in. There's no one way to do it, because if there were, then it would just be a really, really boring community. It'd be a school of people who are all the same, who all think the same about everything. And that's basically the opposite of college. So they're trying to build a community, and they want to get to know the individuals who are applying to be part of that community. So if we can see you at your locker or on the soccer field or hanging out with your friends, doing whatever it is you do, then we feel like we got to know you. And that's what makes an essay effective in my mind.
Perfect. And I got one more to add. What would you tell me if I'm an admissions officer and you met me in an elevator and you wanted to go to my school? What would you tell me? What do you want me to know? It's probably not the, hey, I scored a basketball, I played hoops and I won. It's probably not that. You're not going to tell me that you're president of the student council. What are you going to tell me? It's more like, I'm awesome. Don't you want to know why? And you're going to tell them why. So we can go back to what Sean Felton said, because I think he actually speaks for every single admissions officer at any kind of school, which is that I don't know what specifically I want to read. And that's important to know. So I'm really glad he wrote that, because a lot of people don't say that because it gets misinterpreted and then it falls into that myth category that, well, they don't know what they want to read, so why am I writing it? That's not what he said. I don't know exactly what I want to read, but I know what kind of content I want you to share with me. And it's, tell me who you are. Tell me in a genuine way. Tell me just this tiny story, a whole story from beginning to end, short, that's going to bring me into your mind. Who are you? So, yeah. let's move on. This is for parents. One of the myths that wasn't on my list was it's okay, that it's okay to make the essay better. It's not. And they will know if you, quote, fix it or not. College admissions officers read. They read a lot. You heard Ginger say that she's read like 50,000 essays in her various roles. On the end of someone who might be actually giving money to a student or saying, yes, we'd like you at the school. So when you read, you recognize patterns. When you see the transcript and then you read the essay, if something doesn't match, they know. And my voice at age, well, whatever that might be, is a lot, I don't even care, I'm 60. So my age, my writing does not sound 17, and yours doesn't either. So there was a time, my daughter's now almost 24, and when she must have been like in 9th grade, and she had this assignment at school to write like a short like description of who she was. And I said to her, hey, just for fun, I used to be a ghostwriter, right, for executives. So I said, let me see if I can write it as you, and you write it, and then we'll compare them. So she takes one look at what I wrote for her and said, you know what, Mom, that sounds like you're trying to be 14 and it's not working. I was a professional ghostwriter and I couldn't do it. And I wasn't going to do it for her. I just was curious because I thought I could do it. I could do it. I even bought into that myth that I could do it and sound like her. It didn't work. And I know how. So don't fall into that trap. Don't believe that you can actually do that and they won't know. It'll make your child feel bad because the message to them when you fix things for them is that they're not good enough. And that's not the goal of this task. And admissions people know. They spot patterns. The voice is different. They sound sanitized from so much editing and they can't tell who the kid is. So yeah, we can always tell. I had a dad once who, this student was doing a really good job on his essays and he got to like the second draft and he sent them to me and I read it. And I'm like, whoa, 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 this doesn't sound the same. These two paragraphs, they sound different. And I said, did you write that? And he's like, yeah, Miss Lifton, I wrote that. And I said, come on, because this doesn't sound very good. Who wrote it? He goes, my dad wrote it. I said, I want you to write it. He goes, but this is so much better. I said, this is not better. First of all, it wasn't any good. And it just changed the voice of it. So I had him stop. I said, you have to rewrite this. And it was so good when it sounded like him. So I could tell that it didn't sound like him. Ginger would be able to tell. Our Apple Ruth tech person would be able to tell. Anybody who reads anything can tell if something doesn't sound like the person who wrote it. So don't do it.
But let me say something on behalf of the students who it is supposed to sound like, who have only been on the planet for 17 years or so and may not have the confidence in their own writing skills that you have yet, Kim. There's an easy way to check for students to make sure that they have written in their own voice, and it is simply to read the essay out loud. They do not have to read it out loud to any human being. They can read it to the wall, they can read it to their dog. But if you read it out loud, and I learned this in my psych of language class in college, so I thank my professor for something I still use. But if you read something out loud that you have written and you stumble over it, it's because your brain is anticipating something different than your lips are actually reading. And that's a sign that there's a word choice that wasn't really yours. It came out of the thesaurus a little too deep. It was a suggestion by a well-meaning parent or English teacher or even an essay coach, but it wasn't authentically yours. So if you read something, if students read their writing out loud, they will find the places where they might have accepted a little bit more help than they should have, and just edit it back to the thing that your brain expected to see there, because that is your voice. And
yeah, it's great.
and one of the gifts that students can come out of this process with is a little bit more confidence in themselves as their own storytellers. And that is a really powerful and profound thing to come through this process with.
Yeah, that's true. I tell students to read their stuff out loud, but they don't change things that we did because we don't do it. And nobody should. But sometimes people don't mean to. Nobody, like people who work with students, if they suggest a word, they're not like thinking I'm being unethical. They really think they're helping. So the student is, Ginger says, the student, your children have to take ownership of that. And that is a great way to make sure you like how it sounds, because it'll sound like the student if the student writes it and doesn't take word choices that an English teacher threw out, or a friend, or anybody, or the thesaurus. The thesaurus is actually a big problem, almost right up there with adult intervention. So, all right, let's move on. Okay, now we are at the do's and the don'ts. So my list of do's is similar to where we started in the beginning, which is that like absolutely help your child parse the prompts. And if you don't know how to do that, they're in my book that I'm going to give you all tonight. We parse all the prompts. This current book is missing one, but there's going to be a new version out in about 6 weeks, and it's all over my website. So we've parsed all the prompts. And if anybody wants anything about a prompt, if you emailed me and said, hey, did you parse this prompt from this particular school? If I have it, I'll share it with you. So that can be hard to do, but you can definitely help your child. They don't have to like know exactly what something means. You can help them with that and just make sure that you're giving them accurate information. And I believe that so much that if you contacted me and I was in the middle of something, I would find the information for you. So you can also explain to your child how important the essay is. Explain that some of the stuff they're going to read isn't accurate and that they should be really careful what they read on the internet and see on the TV news or in articles. They should be just really careful where they get the information, and you can help your child make sure that the information that they get is actually accurate and real. You can share positive traits with your child that you see in them. I wouldn't recommend telling them, well, this would be a don't tell them which trait to focus on because it doesn't matter, but you can absolutely share what you like about them. And I think I said this earlier, but my favorite example is, when they're applying to college, I mean, kids are used to us parents telling them to do things. Can you clean the kitchen, unload the dishwasher, go to the store because I need a Diet Pepsi. It doesn't matter what it is. Just in this case, the job is to say, hey, that time you took the trash out for Mrs. Fink. Oh my God, that just made me so proud. You are so compassionate. And then engage them in a conversation. You can do that and just get them thinking. And you can ask your child what the traits are that they think are important to them. You can do that. You should stay positive and offer encouragement. There's no room for negativity in this. I mean, don't read an essay with your child there, because if you make a face, they'll see it. Do it in private. And if your child asks you to read their essay, I would ask them what they want you to read for. It's always a good thing. If someone says, can you look at this? Do you want me to look for missing commas or capitalization? Do you think there's a lot of spelling errors? What do you want me to read for? Do you want me to tell you if it answers the prompt? If it shows reflection? So they should tell you what they want. It's not like an open invitation to tell them they did a bad job. That will just make them feel bad. So everything should be positive. What we don't want you to do is tell your child which prompt to select because you think, again, a myth, you think that colleges favor one prompt over another. And I think this past year, there was this new one, prompt 4, which essentially is asking students to reflect on something somebody did for them that was nice and surprise them. It's kind of complicated, but it's about being appreciative and grateful. And so it was new, it was during COVID, and people wrongly assumed that because it was added, that it was really important for a student to select that. It's a great prompt if a student actually has an answer to it, but only if it speaks to the student. So if you tell them which prompt they should pick and which one you think speaks to them or which one colleges want, that starts this process in a different place. You don't really want to go there. You don't want to tell your child what traits colleges prefer. Remember the 5, 7, or 9 traits that colleges want to read, the myth. You don't want to do that. And you don't want to tell them what to write, which topic is best, what words to use, because it won't sound genuine. And again, it'll make them feel bad. And you don't want to tell them that the essay doesn't matter or that admissions representatives don't read them and don't care about them. So I think that's good for me. I'm sure Ginger has a few up her sleeve.
I thought those were great. I especially love the idea of asking for specificity on feedback. I think that's really helpful and maybe good advice to give your kids about if they are talking to other people, if they're letting other people read their essay. One of the dangers of getting feedback from more than one place is that there's too many cooks and that, pot of chili is way too spicy. It's got, too many different flavors competing. So it's helpful if the English teacher has already read it or the college counselor has already read it, and now you're offering and now you're invited to give feedback. Maybe it is just time to do a little grammar policing and nothing really more. So I really like that piece of advice. I would maybe just echo and amplify some of the things that you've already said, Kim. I do think parents should be allowed to be cheerleaders and be encouraging. And on the flip side, hopefully not nagging. The way that you accomplish that is by be sure that you schedule support to make sure that things are going to get done. So one of the rules we established with a family when I was working at Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts, which is a boarding school, I had a son and a mom that I saw sort of playing cat and mouse, right? The mom was chasing the son around and the son was running away because she was asking a lot of questions he wasn't prepared to answer. And so we made up the rule, you can only talk about college on Tuesday. And so you can pick the day that works for your family, but the idea is that there's a time that you as a parent can say, I need to ask you a few questions about this, and a time that a student agrees to that. And then the whole rest of the week, you're not going to talk about it. And the student knows that their homework is due on Tuesday and you're going to get the answers to the questions you asked the week before. So scheduling some time for this rather than it building up and building up and building up. And it's now deadline time and everyone's anxious and frantic. Try and schedule that a little bit ahead of time. That would be helpful. I guess the don't side of that would be don't wait until too late to engage. If your student is asking you to read the essay, at 9 o'clock and it's due at 11:59, those midnight deadlines, that is not the time to tell them that you think they've chosen the wrong prompt or the wrong approach to the prompt. So think about a schedule and plan ahead. If you're going to want to engage or offer feedback, or you're going to be invited to do that, make sure it's in a time frame where everyone's receptive to the conversation. I do think your advice, Kim, about parents being helpful in students identifying their qualities and maybe some of the stories that help convey those qualities, that can be a wonderful place for family and conversation. And the don't, I think, that I would end with is really, really try to avoid comparing your child to anyone else, to the child of someone that you talk to at a cocktail party, another child within your own family, even the child you were. The comparisons are hard on kids. That's why social media is so damaging to our mental health. So try and just embrace who they are and letting them be their best selves rather than forcing a lot of comparison.
That was so good. I love doing this with you. Um, and then I wanted to add a little something to what you said, which is like what I heard was don't make your children feel bad. It's that same message. Keep it positive. They just want to know, like we believe that all your children are special, but the essay, it doesn't have to be that special to illustrate that. And what you may think colleges want isn't lining up with what they want or what your child is capable or willing to do. So we have to be really careful. It's a continuous balancing act. And we've been doing this a long time. We work with a lot of students. We train professionals who, on how we work with the college essay, and got a lot of information. And still Ginger's my favorite person. So there you go. Anyway, we're going to move on. So WOW's top 5, number 1. I'm going to give this to you, Ginger, because you work in the test industry. I can answer it, but I don't feel that I need to. I know the college essay is important. It's always been important. I hear a lot of different things. And I think that you are actually an expert on this. So I am going to just pass the hat to you.
I'll do my best. I think part of the reason you hear a lot of different things is because a lot of different things are true. Um, so you may have heard that the majority of schools are test optional now. I think it's important to maybe change the terminology a little bit. I like to use the term submission optional rather than test optional. It is actually always optional to take the test. I don't think anyone makes you go into a gymnasium on a Saturday morning and fill in bubbles. So it's not that taking the test necessarily has always been optional, can continue to be optional. It's that now you have the choice of whether or not to submit that as part of your application at a lot of schools where you used to not have the choice. So a test optional process typically puts students in the driver's seat. So I think, as someone who has been in this field for a very long time, students should absolutely take a practice test to see where their scores stand relative to their academic achievement in high school and their goals for college. And if your scores are pretty well in keeping with your academic achievement and relatively close to where you might want to be aiming for college admissions, then that's probably a good place to spend a little bit of time and energy so that you have scores that can help advance your case in the application process. In the same way that if you had a B+ in a class, that's a good place to try a little bit harder and work a little bit harder to get an A-. So you're thinking all the time about where you put your energy and your attention and your effort. And for some students, standardized testing will be one of those places. And for other students, they'll take a practice test and they'll compare that to where their grades are and their goals for college, and they're probably not going to decide to spend a lot of time and energy there, and maybe only submit scores to schools that they're applying to that require them either for admission or perhaps for scholarship consideration. When there's a piece of an application missing, it just puts the emphasis on other parts of the application a little bit more. There's always unanswered questions when you're reviewing an application. You have a very short period of time to read an application, and you're going to try and get all the information you can from that application in the time that's available to you. But there are always questions that you don't, as a reader, necessarily have the answer to, including what the test scores might have been. And so if they're not there, they're just not there, and your emphasis is on all the other parts of the application. Which is to say that the essay was important before when many selective colleges were requiring standardized testing, and it's still important if they're not required and you choose not to submit them. I think if they ask you for an essay, it's important to them, right? They're not asking you to spend time on something because of any other reason than they're just using that as one of the many ways that they get to know you, and one of the ways that they try and predict what kind of student you're going to be on their campus and in their community. So I think it certainly plays an important role if it's requested always. And it's it, like the transcript and letters of recommendation and extracurricular activities and other things, would be emphasized in the absence of one other part of the application. Did that cover everything you wanted it to, Kim?
Well, it did. And I'll just add that it doesn't really matter if it's more important than it was last year or the year before, because they're asking your child to do it and it's an opportunity. So every time the college gives your child an opportunity to do something that's going to help them stand out or stand up or make some difference, why wouldn't they take it? And optional in college essay world, it's not optional. Like every time you want to get into college, if you apply to a college that's selective, you got to use everything you have. And this is such a great opportunity because it's the only thing left that your child can control at this point in their life. They've already, their transcript is done by the end of junior year. It's going to be pretty hard to rescue it in the senior year. You know, it's you've got everything junior year done, and now you have this one last opportunity, which is why it's so anxiety producing. But there is a way to do it right, and make it authentic, make it genuine. Boom. So this will be the last slide because we want to leave some time.
Questions. We have questions coming in, and I want to encourage you all to put your questions in the Q&A box so we can try and cover off as many as we can before we wrap up.
So this is our gift to you. You can download a copy of our book. Wait, the new cover is going to be awesome. So I want you guys to not forget about me. I want you to call me, ask questions, whatever you need to do. I'm so easy to find. It's Kim at wowwritingworkshop.com. If anybody is interested in working with us, we work with only a select number of students a year. We do a lot of training, but now we're working with students. It's not going to be every one of you, but there's someone out there. So just get in touch. But I want to leave you with one last thought before we take these questions. And that's that there's one single thing that you can say to your child to make them feel good, to forget about all the external noise, the myths, everything out there that you think you know, that they think that, you know, the one thing they can do is that they need to learn how to trust themselves. And you can share that message with them. You can remind them that they're smart, that they're great, that they're perfect, they're your child, they're special. And you can tell them that. And your job is to trust them and keep this healthy distance throughout this process. And you'll be amazed at what you see. So with that, I think we'll send this out for questions.
Sounds great. So let's jump in. So can you talk a little bit more about what you mean about reflection and the role that plays in essay writing?
Okay. So at its core, the college essay is all about reflection. It is the only thing they're looking for. And what we mean by reflection is, why is this important to you? What is it that you want colleges to remember about you? So your child let's say is a wonderful swimmer. So why? Let's look at that. How did your child pick this? What do they get out of it? You may find out as they go through this process of learning who they are, what their traits and characteristics are. That's the reflection. What happened? Every effective essay answers these two questions. We call this a theme. What happened? You're going to have a little anchor story that's focused on that. And you're going to, what happened is, what experience, activity, blah, 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 did you do? Boom, boom, and you have a story. And then why? The second question is why? And that's your reflection. Why is this important to you? What is it that you want the college to know about you after they read this? That's the reflection. Does that answer your question? Let us know if it doesn't.
I think that was great. I also feel every essay has to have what my APUSH teacher called the so what factor. Like, why are we learning this history fact, right? Why do I still know about the Stamp Act all these years later? And so that's, I think, an important piece after you've done the reflection, and everything else is to recognize, like, what's the take home message. A question from a student: I'm having trouble recalling specific moments so I can be descriptive the way that I see some other essays do. Any suggestions on how to help with that?
Well, you don't start with your moment. You have to start with doing some thinking, like, what is the college asking you to do? You start there. The first question is, what do I, student, want colleges to know about me? And jot it down. What's important to you and what do you want them to know? And you make a list. What do they know? Make a list. What else do I want them to know? Make another list. Then we can talk about ideas. And that little moment, that anchor story moment, that's not going to come out until you've gone through a whole process of brainstorming with me, with yourself. That doesn't just come out. You're not supposed to just watch us talk and be able to come up with a moment. And so I want you to feel okay about that. That's not like till we have 10 steps. That's like you're already at step 3.
Well, I do have one little tip if you are at step 7 or 8, wherever this is in the wow process. But if you know, for example, that you're trying to tell a story about a time that you persevered and you figured out like, oh, it was at that wrestling tournament when I faced that kid who was literally twice as big as me. And the way to kind of recall that moment is to, an easy way to do it, a trick, is to set a timer for 15 minutes and turn everything else off, right? No, like, who's that text from? And I'll be right down. And maybe I need a drink of water and everything else, right? 15 minutes, do nothing else. And you do a free write where you just try to remember everything about being in that gymnasium. So go full sensory, right? So how did that gym smell? Every gym has a smell. How did the air feel on your skin, right? Was it clammy because you were kind of sweaty? What did you see? What colors were there? The school banners and that sort of thing. What did you hear? Were there whistles, your coach's voice, your parents' voices, your teammates and your friends? Did you have a little lingering taste in your mouth from like the one thing you were allowed to eat? Clearly, I have a child who's a wrestler. I know it a little bit what it's like to spend Saturday in a gym. So recalling all those sensory experiences will help bring you back to that moment. And that is when you can bring back some of those details. And that'll be, hopefully that's helpful.
So, but what was the question again? I can't come up with a moment, right?
No, it was about how do I get descriptive about the moment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. That was great advice. Yeah. Free writing. We do. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a certain format we need to follow when we're writing essays?
No.
And we've got a couple of questions asking about specific examples. And I know you don't share examples for a reason, Kim.
Well, I might be able to. It depends what it is.
So if someone's asking, can you give some specific examples of ways that students have impressed you through their essays and the way that they have thought and the character traits that they're going to share?
Oh, well, the reason I won't share the traits is because then you are going to go use the traits that I tell you impress me. So what I want you to think about is what impresses me is probably the same thing that impresses Ginger and Sean, who we brought in here tonight, even though he's not here. What impresses me is a student who demonstrates how they think in a meaningful story that only the student could tell. So yeah, I could give you a bunch of examples, but what you're going to do with it is you're going to think that that is something that would impress somebody else. And so that is why we don't actually share samples. But I can tell you that if you are a dancer and you're a really, really hard worker and it didn't come naturally to you, and you worked really hard so that you could get on stage for this dance, is a competitive dance program, and you made it, even though you were never that good until later, that would show me the trait of determination. That would show hard work. It would impress me because it was your story and it was meaningful to you. So anything that is meaningful to a student impresses me. I like small, mundane moments that illustrate something big about how a student thinks. I also like, you can use a big story, you can use a small story to illustrate the same thing. And what we always say is, if it happened while you were on some big volunteer adventure in Central America or in your grandmother's backyard. The story, we want the story to be the same. What it shows about you should be the same. So it doesn't have to be the big story about the trip. You don't have to go on a mission trip to impress admissions officers. You can learn something in your house. I once had a counselor ask a question. I remember we were doing a panel, the Michigan Counselors Conference, and Jim Cotter, who is retired, long retired, but there was a counselor from a school way up in the UP. I don't know. Do you know, you guys know Michigan? Looks like this hand. So way up here, right beneath Canada, is the UP. And this counselor had like 1,500 students in her caseload. And she actually told me that her students didn't do anything ever except go to school and go home. So they didn't have anything to write about. And I said, nonsense. There's a story in that student's head. They do stuff every day. Maybe this, they've learned how to relax through knitting. I mean, it does, everybody has something to say. Every one of you here, every one of your children here, I could help find a story that would be meaningful to them. So what impresses me is you. You're impressive. Whoever asked that question, you impress me because you're asking me what's important to me, and you are. And what's important to you is important to me.
Okay, we need to wrap up. We're going to do 3.
Oh my God, it's 9 o'clock.
Questions.
Oh.
So one person was asking how much time an admissions officer spends reading college essays. I'm going to just tell you how much time they spend reading the whole application. So that can be, I mean, it depends on the school and the experience of the admissions officer, but it's probably somewhere between 8 and 15 minutes for the whole application. So it's pretty quick. But we get really, really good at doing it really, really fast. And you get their full attention the whole time that they're reading your application, and they're rooting for you the whole way. Any advice for students who are applying to colleges outside the United States?
As far as the essays?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, they're actually not as hard. They're pretty basic. They ask you a question, you answer it. It's the schools in the US, the essays are really, really important. If anybody's applying to a school out of the country in the UK, I mean, Ginger and I, we all know people who specialize in that. It is not my area. I have helped students, and all you do is read the prompt and answer it. Same way, just parse the prompt, answer it. But they're pretty straightforward. The ones
they
I've
are. Yeah. So I've worked with a lot of international applicants. I worked at Atlanta International School and have worked with a lot of students who are applying back home or US students who are hoping to study abroad. And it is actually really that they want a very straightforward response.
Really easy. It's really easy, guys.
Yeah, it's less storytelling and more just factual reporting. That's for sure. Thank you all so much for being with us tonight, for asking such good questions, and for all your attention. I hope you'll take advantage of the resources that Kim is offering and the opportunities to work with us either at WOW or at Appleruth. If we can be help to you in the future, you will, as I mentioned, receive a copy of the recording and the slides in an email on Thursday. I hope some of you will join us for Jed's talk tomorrow, and I hope you will keep us posted if there are other questions and concerns that we can share with you, because we really want to help you achieve the goals that you have as a student or parents that you have for your children. We are honored to be part of this journey and wish you all the best in the road ahead. Thanks, everybody, and good night.
Thank you. Bye, guys.